Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Products and Services here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to present Dion McCormick, our lead solutions engineer, also no relation. Today, Dion is going to be going over actually something that someone had written in for, a question that someone had written in, but he's also here to answer your questions as well as he demonstrates Alpha Anywhere. So if you do have questions, go ahead and type them in to the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. Also joining us today is Sarah Mitchell, I believe, if I can find her online. If not, I can find her in a minute. And she is here to answer your questions as well. And she's in charge of our documentation department. But she's also here to announce and present a new link to the Alpha Anywhere Xbasic guide, which just came out. So let's get started. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, I am. Excuse me.
No
Thank you. There we go. Frog in the throat. Little wet and chilly out there.
It is.
But actually, it's a positive thing. I live in the Austin area, and if anybody's been in this area, we have something called cedar fever, where all the cedar trees start pollinating, and so it's literally like one of these dust clouds you see in the Sahara Desert is basically what this area becomes. So when a little rain comes along and just pulls that out of the air, so it's like good news, bad news, like anything out there. But hey, welcome everybody. Little tidbit there for you. And Dave, thank you very much for the introduction. We always appreciate your attendance and your being with us, and more importantly, your questions. So today I have two different items. Getting a little echo there.
I'm getting some echo as well. Sarah, I believe that's you who did just join us. Right
yes, quite the entrance. So today I've got two demos that came in off of questions, both on previous, but also through guides. And I really appreciate people taking the time to do that. It allows me to prepare fewer, less uncontrolled crashes into ground when I have a little time. But also we're here for any other questions. So make sure you go to the GoToWebinar questions area of your control panel and put any questions that you have. And remember, we do post these to our video feed. So when you want, we have replays of these. You can go back and watch them, and they're really a rich set of information for you to tap into. So before I want to go through that, though, I want to introduce Sarah, who released this week something I think is absolutely fantastic, which is the Xbasic guide. This is a printed user kind of guide, and it's just really a super powerful tool to have available. And I've talked to a number of people that literally, like, the moment they got it, they print it out and it's sitting on their desktop, because it's a great quick reference guide if you're trying to do something in our Xbasic language, and you just pop it open. It's really well structured, so it's easy to find what you're looking for. There's great examples in there. And it's available both in a PDF format, you can print it, but you can also display that PDF on the screen. But we will be updating it, or rather, I shouldn't use the we word. Sarah will be updating that as we go forward.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was about to say the royal we will be updating it.
Yeah, yes, exactly. And, it's a living document. And actually, we've had some great input and great feedback from our users, which we always appreciate. And that's already been incorporated in the PDF document. So I'm going to bring Sarah on. I'm going to transfer it over to her, and she's going to talk about where you can go get the latest and greatest version of the Xbasic user guide.
All right, Sarah, are you there?
Or maybe
I am
not.
here.
There it is.
Give me one moment. Hold on a sec.
By the way, Sarah is fighting the plague. I don't think it's the Chinese one. I think
it's the coronavirus from
It's China. Something like it's a northeastern variant of it or something like that.
Yeah.
Not funny, man. Oh, did she expire? Wow.
Uh-oh, wow.
It's a brutal virus.
Boy, that's a really fast-moving virus.
It's fast acting.
Oh, too bad. Sorry, Sarah.
Oh, no, I'm here. I was in the middle of a thought when you asked me to. I was trying to finish it up real quick.
That's what you get for thinking.
No more thinking.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, there's been some revisions. I want to put an extra special thank you out there to Ron, who has been a phenomenal wonderful person who's given me lots of really, really helpful feedback. So, and because of his enthusiasm for this new document, it's got some great new updates in it. So I'm gonna go pull up the link for that for you here. Let me
Great.
just find it real quick.
And if you want to put that in the chat window, that would be awesome.
I will put that in the chat window, and it's the same link as last week.
Same link, but new document.
Yeah, it's just been updated. And I don't know if you asked me to share my screen or not.
Nope, I think just the link should be enough.
Okay, yeah. Let me put the
Unless there's something in particular you'd like to show.
Well, no, I would like to show it.
All right, let's do it. I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter then.
You forced me to talk today.
I know, sorry. Take the sickest member of the office and make them go on first. All right, you got it.
Oh my gosh, yeah, with this cough. Hopefully it doesn't get away from me. Anyway, let me see if I can figure out how to do this. Unfortunately, I've got like the console debugger open right there. We go. Okay, and it says people can see your screen. Click to stop sharing. Did I click okay?
Yep, we can see your
Did
screen.
you see my screen?
Yep, it's
All
coming
right,
through.
this is the guide, and there's been some fixes. I made a big goof too, but it's all been updated and fixed. So I definitely download this. It's accurate now. I apologize for those mistakes I made, but I'm excited about this. We've made some changes too that came as suggestions, like adding section numbering so people can exchange information more easily. So this is all up here and available now. But definitely like download this, work with it. And it is going to be I am planning to also post about it on our blog and integrate all this into the Alpha Anywhere documentation system. There's a little bit of logistics that have to happen there so I can get all the content in there. But that's the PDF will always be available, and we'll always try to make sure it's up to date. So yep, go ahead and grab that. It's www.alphasoftware.com/hubfs/alpha anywhere Xbasic guide in camel case .pdf.
.pdf. I see it right there in the chat window.
Who are watching a recording, yeah. And this link will also be available in the comments on our YouTube video. The link is also available in the description, not the comment, of the last week's webinar as well. So
great.
I want to make sure you guys have this resource.
Yep. I'll make it easily findable. Super. Thanks very much.
Outstanding. And you can bookmark that.
Exactly.
And as we make updates, it will always be in that great location.
All right, so I'm going to turn it back over to you, Dion, and I'm going to make you the presenter.
Yes, you got it. And in fact, we're going to use a little Xbasic today.
We're going to use some Xbasic. And if I recall, you're going over the use of the security system. Is that right? And the extended user table, or are you doing something else?
So I'm going to do two things. And one, they're kind of different animals. One is I wanted to follow up on the control bar, which is one of the most powerful controls in our arsenal. And specifically the ability to use what are called drop-down menus in the control bar, which was just recently added, which really makes life really nice. It's very cool. It's simplified the building of control bars, but what I want to show you today is how powerful it can be. I'm also going to talk a little bit about access control, i.e. security. We had a question last week of a person saying, hey, well, how do you use the built-in template for adding a user to the security environment and at the same time adding that user to the security and also the extended user information table. And it's really not too bad. There's a few steps needing to go through, but once you have that, you'll be in great shape. So what I'd like to do is just run through the control bar one first, and then we'll go there. So let me get my system set up, so bear with me. Okay, and we're here. Okay, so let me go ahead and show the demo first. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you the working preview here. And you'll see I have a very straightforward control bar here. It's got a menu over here on the left, a piece of static text right now, but this will be a button, and then a menu on the right. And I drop down and you've got a nice looking little menu. This is the, just using one of our built-in styles. But you can see, it has all the highlighting and it has the ability to do multi-level menu items and things like that. So very flexible. And, you can put a lot of content in here and it is stylable. And then on the right-hand side, we have another menu here. Now, ignore that little icon, but you can see similar thing. You have basically a drop down with multi-levels of menu that is available that you want to do. Now, they basically, to a certain degree, look the same. They operate the same. They have not the same content, but the reality is how they're rendered is very, very different. So I'm going to run through that really quickly here. So I'm going to start from scratch just so we can see it, kind of make sure that people understand the steps and how you go from there. So I'm just creating a new UX, and for people who are new, this is basically your form building capability within Alpha. As always, I like to start using panels, and so I'm going to include a panel card, and then I'm going to click here and say panel header. Now, when I click panel header, which is an area that's always going to be at the top of my panel card, so no matter what orientation my panel card's at, it's going to be at the top. So I want to add that panel header, and you'll notice when I do so, it asks me, well, would you like to include a control bar? Because that's the natural place to have a control bar. In my case, yeah, go ahead and just create that for me. So now I have a panel card, I have a panel header with a control bar there. I'm just going to drop in some static text in here, and let's look and see what it looks like. Well, right now it's not going to look like a whole lot of nothing because our control bar is empty. So you can see I'm getting a message, oh, I haven't defined that. No big deal, but you can see here's my content here. But you'll notice this is where my control bar is going to live, up here in the panel header. And if I go through, and let's say I do a mobile orientation, the cool thing about it is that panel header will always be at the top. So you notice, it's at the top of my thing. And if I scroll it and stuff like that, if I go ahead and say, you know what, I'm going to make this horizontal, you'll see that the control bar and more importantly, the panel header extends to the width of the current screen, whether it's small or it's large, it automatically does that. So the control bar and the panel header are what I would call responsive in nature, so they're very, very handy. So let's go ahead and save this, and I'll go ahead and put there. And this is all going to be static, so if you're interested in getting this after we're done, as always, just send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com and we will send that out to you. So right now my control bar is empty, so I need to go into my control bar and actually define some content there. So I double click on it, or there is a control bar properties actually there to open up my control bar. Now, kind of nice is there's some control bar templates. I'm going to start from scratch, but you don't have to. And more importantly, once you get a nice control bar that you really like, you can save it as a template and restore it at any time. And that's kind of a constant capability within Alpha, is that we want to save you time. Once you've done something once, you're probably going to reuse it or reuse something very closely to it. So you can do that here. But I'm going to go ahead and manually through it. So the key things I'm going to do are items, control bar layout. For this, that's really all I'm going to focus on today. There are a lot of other features of the control bar. We've done guides before. Actually, if you go right here, you'll see that we have the control bar user guide documentation that is put together by ours truly, Sarah here, and it's phenomenal. You click on that, it's going to open it up. It's going to have a lot more data to it. So, but I want to go to items because control bar is made up of items. And as you can see, now I don't have any items. So I'm going to add my first item here, and I'm just going to put in HTML. And that is just going to be a piece of static HTML. Now, I say static, but it can be data driven. So let me go ahead and do this. Hold on one second. Maybe I'm getting the plague. My voice is starting to get a little croaky. So it's got, and I'm just going to say, I'm going to go here. It's called HTML1, but I'm going to go here to the text. I'm going to say webinar demo. Okay, so I've created our piece of HTML, but I also want to add that drop-down menu. So I'm going to go ahead and here and click Add Control Bar Item. So as you can see, I'm kind of creating the little elements that are going to go into my control bar. So in this case, we have a new feature called the button dash drop-down menu. Now, what's cool is that we've always had the disclosure button, and a disclosure is basically an area that will show up on demand. It's like a window concept, but it was kind of a lot more work to put it together. And there were a couple different ways to do it. It got simpler, but in the end, a lot of people were just saying, hey, you know what? I just want a menu. That's all I want. I don't want to mess with anything. I want a menu. And so this feature was added by our development team. So I click here. It creates my drop-down menu. I can go ahead and put the text here for what it is. Now, this is a button, so I could make it text, or I could make it by text followed by an image, or in this case, I'm going to go image only. And now that I've selected this button to be an image, that's the button is how it's going to be activated. I can go into the icon here, go to the SVG icons, which is the ones I want to use, and I encourage you to use those. And I've got a little, classic hamburger menu structure here. Now, you're not forced to use this. You can use any icon you so choose. So you get to choose and decide what it is. But that's what I'm going to use for this demo here. Okay, so now I've created my HTML and my drop-down menu. Now I'm ready to actually define what my menu looks like. So you'll see when I'm clicking on button drop-down menu on the right-hand side, we have menu definition. So I'm going to go ahead and open that, and it actually builds up a sub sort of panel or control panel. So I've got two types of menus, cascading and expanding, and you can play with those. They just operate a little differently, and it's really up to you. Cascading is kind of that, kind of a stair step concept. Expanding kind of stays within one column, and you can kind of choose what's best for your particular situation. But I'm going to go ahead and use cascading for now. Now, for the method for defining the menu, I have the built-in menu builder. You can actually use three ways to do this: menu builder, static JSON string, or Xbasic function. So I'm going to keep menu builder here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and modify this menu here by clicking here, and you'll see it opens up my tree data Genie. And I can start building my menu here. So I can go item one, let's do this a little more interesting. Home, settings, other, actually, you know what, settings, we'll go connection, storage, yada, yada. And then we'll also add a last one here, which is log out, something like that. So this is just my structure. Now you notice how I'm doing this is I'm actually just typing it in, and I'm putting a tab to indent this so that I'm basically building the structure of my menu here. And I click OK. Now, once I've done there, it now shows me more of a realistic of, oh, okay, you've got like a tree menu set up where you have a home here. And again, you can go down as many layers as you want. You can add subchilds below that, et cetera. You can modify them, move them around, delete them, from there. Now for home, I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what, let's go ahead and include an icon. So I'm going to click here on the icon, go to my SVG icons, and then just type in home is where I want to be, home on the range. And so you can add icons to each of these items here. Let's go storage. Let's for giggles, we'll do that. And we'll go here and SVG, let's try disk. No, storage. Let's just grab something. That was probably not a good one. 222. I'll grab that. Okay, it's just for fun. Now, really important, you can go ahead and add in here on click events. I'm not going to add them now, but that's where you would trigger, say, action JavaScript or your own JavaScript or pieces there. Along with that, also, you can define security groups, which say, hey, you know what? If you're an administrator, you can see this item and anything below it. If not, you can't see it. So you can actually enable those security groups and use the built-in ones. And then last but not least is you can use show hide expressions, where you can actually server side say, look at a session variable and say, oh, if it's set here, don't show them these menu items. So there's some really nice ways to customize the behaviors of this menu on the fly using security groups and showed hide expressions. Now, once I've built this menu, check this out. Let me go ahead and show you the JSON data. So this is the JSON data that defines the menu. And it may look a little confusing to begin with, but you'll see that it's an array of JSON objects. You have your first one here, and then I have my second one here, and then my third one here. So those are my top level items. But you'll notice in my second one, I now have children showing those three there. And then I could add another layer, another layer. So the nice thing about it is once you've built your menu, you can copy this and use it. Now, the other is you can look and see this as an Xbasic array. And this is kind of a little bit more, but this is showing how you could basically build this exact menu using Xbasic. And so you can see it's creating it's basically an array of items here with the first, etc. And you can look at it. It's a little hard to understand up top, but there's some built-in functions that are really nice on how to use that. So you don't necessarily have to do it manually. But if you do, you're welcome to do that. So now I've built my menu. And then I could modify the properties of it. I could add a pointer icon. I could create what my width of it is, my height, etc. I can also tell me whether it should be animated or just pop up. It's really up to you to do everything you need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now, on my control bar here, I've defined my items, but I have not necessarily told it how to lay it out on the control bar up top. So now I need to go over here to this tab called Control Bar Layout. And now I'm at my control bar layout. And you can see I can have multiple layouts, and I actually don't have any yet. So I'm going to go ahead and click here to add a layout. And it's just, I'm going to call this, actually, I like to call it default layout, and click OK. But you can name it anything you want. You can also have, when you have multiple layouts, you can actually define which one's the default layout, which means when the control bar is first rendered, it will show that particular layout. And what's neat is you can create multiple layouts, and on the fly, just say, hey, control bar, show this layout, show this layout. So if I'm on the home page, show this layout. When I'm on editing a record, show this layout. If I'm on a list, show this. Very flexible. So you'll see over on the right hand, then now I have my ability to do layout definition. So I can click here and add a line. There's no lines here. And then I'm going to go ahead and add on the left. I'm going to go ahead and put, for now, I'm going to put my static text over on the left-hand side. In the middle, and after, I'm going to put my drop-down menu on the after. Now, this is very important with this nomenclature. Notice it says before, middle, and after. It doesn't say left, middle, and right, because if you are creating a control bar that's vertical, you might have top, middle, and bottom. So the idea is, it's more contextually the ability for you to use this in many different scenarios that you may want to choose in your application. So again, left, menu, middle, and before, middle, after is like left, middle, and right. Okay, so now we have our control bar. It would render here. I've noticed this rendering, it doesn't always be very good, but we can go ahead and click OK, and now I can save this. So now I'm going to go into my working preview. And you know what? I have to do one thing. I have to report this. So you have to go in. And this is a little thing I found out. I have to pre-render. Now, this is just something, I think it's a release issue, is that you'll notice here, and if I go into working preview, by the way, I'm going to just copy this and send it over to development as a bug report with a sample, which is, I highly recommend. If you send in a bug report, create a little video, describe what it is, give them an example, it'd be great. But notice I'm clicking on here, nothing's happening. If I go and pre-render and save this, it's going to pre-render the component. I think there's just something where it needs to pre-render it before it actually gets seen. Oh, what's going on? Oh, I'm an idiot. Here's my menu. So maybe you don't need a pre-render. I'll go test that later. So don't take that with a big grain of salt, like the size of a boulder. So you can see now I've got my menu over here, and I have settings, home. So this is the cascading. So it's kind of popping out here. If I do it over here, actually, I'll show you that it will, it knows where the side of the screen is. So, and if I had set items like, I could click on these and then they would trigger those trigger event if they're, so as you can see, it's very simple to create, nice looking, very fluid. These are beautiful menus. They work out really nicely. In fact, let's go ahead and go to controls, do mobile. Let's do a working preview here and show you what it looks like here in a mobile. It's all nicely set. Oh, it just shows outside there. It must be a, see here. Oh, it shouldn't show there. It should say inside there. So I'll play with that a little bit more. So now I can go in, if I need to change this menu, I can go into the menu or into the control bar, go to my items, and then go into my menu definition. And I can modify this to my heart's desire. Say, oh, you know what? I want this to be up one level. I want connection to have a different icon. That connection icon is something like this. Let's see. Let's do fun. And boom, now that I've done that, save it. I've got my working preview. I can then see my menu operating. Oh, let me take it out of mobile. And we'll go from here. And you'll see now I've got my new menu item with the different items there. And as I mentioned earlier, if I'm not sure I like that style, let's do a couple things. One is I'm going to change the style of this menu from a cascading to a expanding menu. Changes some of the parameters there. The other thing is I'm going to go to my control bar layout. and I'm going to edit this line right here. So I want to change it, and I actually want to go ahead and delete these items here. And in this case, what I want to have is my drop-down menu on the left and my icon on, or my text over here. So let's go ahead and look at what that does. And we'll do a working preview. So you'll see over here, there's some static text on the right-hand side, and now my menu shows up here. Now notice my menu style here. Since I've selected the expanding, instead of popping out on the right, it expands. And this could be on a mobile device, maybe more valuable because then it will expand below the item. So you can pick and choose what you want to, how you want to implement your menu. So that's the intro, but let's take it to the next level because it's always fun to take it to the next level. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my control bar, and I'm going to add another menu in this. And I'm going to go ahead and go back to my items. Remember, I can't add anything until it's actually in the control bar. So I'm going to add another one here, and I'm selecting button drop-down menu, and it renames it automatically. Okay, so I'm going to go into the menu definition. I'll go ahead and select it as expanding, but now instead of menu builder, what I'm going to do is select Xbasic function. Okay. So now I'm going to, instead of loading this statically, I'm going to use an Xbasic function. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go load our menu content is what I'm going to call it. So what I did here is I clicked on this Xbasic function because it's saying, well, where am I going to get this data? So we're going to use menu content. So what's nice is I can show a sample function, and this has sample items. And so I can copy this, and then I can go to my definitions here and paste it here. That's it. So now what's going to happen is I have a menu that is going to be on the fly. When it renders, it's going to run this Xbasic function that I defined called menu content, and that is what's going to deliver the content to the menu versus the other one where I defined it statically. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now, the reality is I need to now go over here to Xbasic functions because I created the prototype, but let's check and make sure it looks good. So it gives you a lot of instructions. First, it shows you, let's say you want to have a menu that looks like this. Well, one way is to create an Xbasic array, which is very handy because then it's kind of programmatic. The other method is you can actually just use a text representation and a special built-in function. So I'm going to go ahead and use that one for now. So I'm just uncommenting. Basically, we create a piece of text. We load it with a textual representation of our menu. You'll notice we have alpha, then sub-alpha, beta, etc. And in there, you can click all these pieces here. And as you can see, that's kind of nice if I'm just putting in some standard there, but up to you. And then you'll notice that my JSON definition is basically a built-in function that converts this text into what I need, and then I deliver that back to the function that goes to the control bar, and the control bar renders it. So I'll click save, but I have to do one more thing, and I remember I forgot that. I'm going to go back into my control bar. Well, I've created my 3 items, but guess what? It's missing from the control bar layout. You can see I've got that. So let's go ahead and add well, first I'm going to go back here on this, and it's just, I'll just make it a button, and I'll call it click me. There you go. And I'll go back to my control bar layout. I'm going to edit this line right here, and let's go ahead and add my new menu here into the center of it. So my left will be my hard-coded menu, the one will be there. So let's go ahead and click there and click go there and save. And voila, if everything works smoothly, we have our traditional menu here that we did before. Got my static, and here is my click menu. And you'll see it has all the functionality you need, etc. These icons are not showing up, so I'd have to make sure in my environment, they're resolving correctly, but you can include icons and other pieces here. But you'll notice that before this menu was generated, it ran this Xbasic function. Now, why is that important? Well, I can then, in any way, shape, or form, tailor my menu construction based upon session information, who's logged in. It really just opens up an enormous amount of opportunities for you to customize your menu. Plus, if you ever have to modify your menu, it could literally pick a list of menu items out of a database table and build it on the fly. So you can start going to self-maintained kind of systems, or like a user can say, hey, I'm going to put on there my personal favorites, or hey, that's a great idea. Let's say someone is editing a bunch of records, and I love Salesforce does this. I don't know if you've seen the Salesforce CRM, but it remembers the last few things you've worked with. And so what happens is once you click on and look at a record, it kind of remembers, oh yeah, you looked at it, because often you're going to go back and revisit that within a short period of time. So you could create the same thing where as you go through, you could throw into a session variable the most recent things you've hit, and then boom, you could render that when you render the menu with that information in it. Now I'm going to come back at our next session, and what I want to show you, which is really cool, is that there is a new capability, and I didn't have time to put this together, but I'm going to say refresh, and I just wanted to do some checking, and I have something else to do in terms of today oops, let's go ahead and put the text in there properly. Spelling is our friend. Okay. Well, there's a cool new action that was just added recently, which allows you to refresh the control bar menu data. So let's say that scenario where I go and open up a record, and I want to kind of put that onto the stack as the most recently refreshed stuff. Well, now I have the ability to trigger this, and after I've updated, say, my session variable with that opening record, then I can go ahead and just tell the menu to refresh itself. It's going to rerun that Xbasic call and then refresh the data. So it's really cool because this allows you to just, as you're moving through it, keep that menu refreshed with whatever content you would like from there. So that's a quick introduction. I'm going to go ahead and come back and show you that example next time, but I just want to kind of open that up for now. So that is the control bar menu. I think we open it up for a few questions, but then I need to jump in and do the security one because that was asked by another individual.
That sounds good. Let's see if we can find something here. Oh, okay, here's a good one. When you have a cascading menu and you have it afterwards, can you have the arrow, sort of that greater than symbol, point to the left instead of to the right? So for example, if you're on the right side of the screen, it might make sense for it to cascade to the left.
That's a good point. I don't know about that, but
Okay.
You can go here and send a enhancement request. And that would be a great enhancement because I agree with you. If you're on the right-hand side of the screen, if you have like an arrow going the wrong direction, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So it'd be interesting how you would approach that. I'll look at that. There may be a way to do it on the fly. You would have to do it on the fly because you have to look at when you build the menu, you kind of know which side of the screen you're going to be on. So I guess you could replace, but I wonder how you replace that. Let me look at something real quick. I'm going to go in here.
All right.
Yep. And we'll go to items. We'll go to this one right here. Let's go ahead and go into the menu definition. I don't see where you can define the direction. Oh, wait, it's cascading, right?
Put it on the right, though. Yep.
Yeah, let's see. Menu, pointer position.
The most appropriate edge is automatically selected. Okay.
Yeah. This pointer icon is sort of like it would drop down from the item you click on.
Right. I see. Yeah.
So we can check around on that, but that makes a lot of sense because, from a user, it's like, well, it's pointing in the right direction. It might bother them, get them bugged.
Excellent.
And if they do complain about that, you can say you have way too much time on your hands, and there are a lot more important things you really should be focusing on. Just
I don't know about that. Sometimes it's just
I know. Wishful thinking on my part.
One last
question.
question.
The Russian system. It works this way, and that's how it's going to work.
Exactly.
Customer is always wrong.
You've put together, in this particular example, you put a panel header and a panel cards and all that. And the question is, just generally speaking, can you use a UX without panels? Can you just use containers, for example?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
No requirement at all.
All right, great. That was the question, I believe. So that's it. And the next question is actually the one that from last week. So we can jump right into that.
All right, cool. Yeah, and I want to make sure it'll take a little bit here. So the question from our loyal reader in Fort Lee, New Jersey, was regarding security. Remember that? Yeah.
I do.
Miss Emily Latella. So I'm going to jump down here to my security areas. Okay, so the question was this. Alpha has a number of pre-built security user interfaces, specifically around creating users within the security. Now, in the last year, we've introduced what's called the extended user information table, because often the security system is trapping username and password and then groups, sort of like what their permissions are. But we found that everybody was sort of expanding that to include a whole bunch of other profile data, phone number, email, first name, last name, you know, a whole wealth of things. And so what happened was the development team said, you know, everybody's kind of doing it. Let's give them some structure to do it. And so now within your project, you can define what's called the, where is it? Extended user security info. And basically all this is a table within your database that holds information that you want to associate. And it has what's called the user ID field, which is the user ID that's going to match the security system. So now you have essentially two stores of data. You have the security environment, and then you have the extended user information environment, which is just a database table. But the nice thing is that when you've defined the linkage, then Alpha knows when the person logs in, they know what that login user ID is. It knows how to go to that table and look up that information. And what's really valuable is built into our grid and other things, you can actually fill arguments that are used for filtering and stuff directly from that table. So it takes away a lot of steps. Often what you did when you logged in is load up a bunch of session variables and then refer them later. You can get rid of all that management to make life easier. But the flip side is when you create a user, you now need to be able to create a user both in the security environment and also in the extended user information table. It's kind of
the extended user information is for, you know, I guess the regular table, which you can't access directly, if I'm to understand, has things like
correct.
Username and password and email. But the extended one would have, you know, maybe account numbers or preferences, or preferred language or currency or things like that.
Absolutely. And you can modify that table all you want. You can look at it, you know, in this case, here's the default ones that are in my table. I have to define which one's the user ID, but the sky's the limit. You can use anything you want for your particular business requirement. Cool. So let me go ahead and save this. Let me go ahead and publish all this, and I'm going to show you an operation, then we'll come back and show you. So I built a little example application, something very simple that basically had a login page, and then it logged in there. So, and if I can remember my users, actually I'll come in and cheat. Okay, so very simple, and I've just got to log in here. So first I'm going to go back in here and show you what user groups we have. So you'll see we have two user groups, administrators and users. And right now I have three: administrator, John Doe, and user. So now what I'm going to do is first I'm going to log in as the administrator at Alpha. And then I'm going to go here and click password. Okay, and log in. And that's really high security. So this what I'm now logging in as the administrator. So as the administrator, I have this ability to create a new user. So I've got a UX device, our UX form here, which I'll show you how to build in a few minutes. Very simple. I'm going to put in the few pieces of data. So I'm going to put Jane Doe in there at 800-555-1212. Now, this is extended user information. This means this is not going to be stored in the security information or security tables. It's actually going to be stored in my user extended info table. Here now I have to put in, let's go ahead and put in Jane Doe at Alpha Software, or I'll just go Gmail, make it shorter. And I'm going to put in a password and a password. And once I've done, I click the submit button. And what it's going to do is take this information and insert it into the separate systems. And so now I have a user that's available within the system. Now, behind the scenes, I'm also setting Jane's sort of their people. And now, this didn't give me a message, but I'd probably put a little message. I'd put this together very quickly just to do it. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and log out. And I'm just going to go ahead and put in jane.doe@gmail.com, password. And, oh, did it not? Let me see, .doe. Or did I wonder, did I do jane.doe? Let me look at here.
Or is it just plain, it's just Jane Doe?
I put Jane Doe. I'm cheating.
No period.
Cheater. JaneDoe@gmail.com. There we go. And I'm logging in, and you'll notice when I log in, it actually knows, I'm back to here. Now I would probably hide this from the user. So I'd go into my tabbed UI here, for instance here, and I would go to controls. I'd go here and I'd go into the security groups, and I'd say only administrators can create this new user and extend it. So once I've done that, now when I log in as a user, I wouldn't see it here, but as an administrator, I. So what I want to do is show you now, and since I've already got it here, is show you how I built this and integrated into it. So first step was when I built this project, I did two things. First, I enabled the web security system, and I created some groups, and administrators and users. And again, those can be anything you want from there. Also, along with that, I created a sample user administrator because I needed that just for testing and other pieces there. Now, the second thing I did is I went to the project properties. I scrolled down until I found the extended user information table, and then I defined this information. I told it which connection string to use, what table to use, and then what is the field that's going to be the field that links the security system to that. And you can rename it anything you want, but that is the sort of the ID of what the person logs in. Now, one thing that's kind of cool.
Can I pause you right there?
Sure, please do.
And ask you a little question about that table. So now that's a table that you're going to need to set up yourself, like on RDS or MySQL or SQL or something like that, right?
Well, it's in the database, so it's going to be in your database. But what's cool is once you've defined the connection string and typed in the name, you can actually click this little blue link here, and it will auto-generate that table for you.
It'll build it for you once it knows the connection. Very cool.
And so you'll see here, let me show you how I did it, is that I said, okay, great. I typed in the name of the table. So, you don't have to use it. I could call this users. It doesn't really matter. But now I go here. Now you'll notice here that it's got a special syntax to define how these items are. So you go default field list or stuff, you can modify that. This is not meant to be a database editor. What's nice too is once you've built this table, you can go in and use your regular database tools to modify it, add fields, etc. Because the system's smart enough to look at all the fields that are in that table, whether they were there at the beginning. When the person logs in and you ask for that information, Alpha goes and inspects that table and says, oh, there's 20 fields. I'm going to go ahead and have those available to the user. Then once I've done that, I click OK. It will generate a table in my database with that name, with that information. Then I define which is the link field. And again, you can change any of the text you want. And then now you have connected the Alpha project to that table. And therefore, all the functions around Alpha automatically looking up that data are now enabled. So great question. Cool.
Excellent. Thanks.
Okay. So now I want to go ahead and create my tool for creating a new person. Well, the cool thing again is I go here to New, Web Component, UX, and you'll notice that there's a whole bunch of security framework pre-built UXs. And voila, there's one called Security Framework - create new user account _ and _ or underbar and underbar, add user information to related table. So this will do that twofer versus the other. I mean, if you just want to create a new user account, this would be a UX that would just put them in the security system. And again, you can write your own code to do the rest, but this just simplifies life. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and this is saying, should I refresh it, and say yes, because this is data bound. And we're going to have to make some modifications. This was originally built with a while back. So you have to go in and make a few changes on these things here. So first thing we're going to do is the style. It's the old OS 7. So I'm going to go ahead and select my project style so it uses my project style. So that's the first step here. So let's look at this UX. First, it's got my controls. And you can see there's some text here which has instructions and how to do these pieces here. But you'll see we have those two frames. The top part, which is the information for the personal data, i.e. for the extended user information table. And then the bottom part, which is where you're putting in the username, password, etc. And then you'll see there's some hidden fields called user roles, user GUI ID, spacer, etc. So we need to do a few things. First is when this was originally built, it is a data-bound control. So if I go to first name and I scroll down here, you'll see that it's connected to a table called registered users and field name first name. Well, mine looks differently. So this will break. So the first thing I need to do is reconnect this UX to my data. And to do that very quickly, I can just go over here to data binding. This allows me to control the data binding to this. So I can go ahead and I can say, let's go ahead and bind the controls. So I'm clicking this second item called bind the controls on your UX to fields. I'm going to specify the table, and you can see, oh, I'm putting it at the wrong table. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this table, and I'm going to add this table. By the way, feature requests would, oh, actually I have to do one other thing. Before I do that, you'll notice also my SQL. Let me go through that a little slower. By the way, I'll put in a feature request. We might as well use extended underscore user underscore table. So maybe it's already done and pre-connected to the default field. So I can go into specify table. So you'll see that down here, I'm using a connection string called contact manager. Well, I don't have one of those things. So first I need to change the connection string, and I'm going to use my CONN. Let's see which one. Yes, that's the one I want to use. Then what I want to do is then click the table to add, and you'll see I have my extended user information table in there, and click OK. So now what I've done is told it that I'm going to data bind this UX to this connection string in this particular table, and it has this information, and it knows what the primary key is, etc. So that was step number one, was kind of telling the UX, well, this is where you really need to connect to. Now that we've done that, gives me a warning saying, well, you got to kind of reset things up. So the next thing we need to do here is to go to bind UX component controls to table fields. So what this does is actually tell the mapping between the field and the item in, these are my fields and my item in my database. So you can see it's still got my old data here. So I'm going to go through here. I'm going to say first name is now going to go to my extended user information table first name. And you can see now you have table alias and first name, last name, phone, and I don't think I have phone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just unbind that and make it updatable. So I'm kind of just telling it ignore that. And then username is actually called user ID. So I'm binding again my fields on my screen, 2 fields in the database. And right now I only have 3, which is first name, last name, and user ID. By the way, this user ID is used for 2 things. One is to insert the record into the extended user information table, but also used to put them in the security system. By the way, that's how it works. It kind of links them using that information. So I rebound to the correct table on connection string. I've rebound these. So now my connection is properly. So if I go here to first name, and you can see it's pointed to my correct table and my correct field. So I could go into my database, add a phone field, and then come back in here and then create that binding once again so it stores it properly in that extended user information. And in fact, you can add as many other fields as you want. It's really up to you in terms of you just keep adding the fields and bind them, and then Alpha will take care of it from there. Now, the actual connection to the database system or to the security system is not done through bounding. So you can see that I am binding the username to that user ID field, but password are unbound because they're not saved into the user extended table. And more importantly is Alpha takes care of doing all that stuff for security purposes. Now we have to do 2 other things. So first step was rebind this bad boy. Second step is we need to go to the server-side events. So as you can see on the OnDialogInitialize, there's a little piece of code here. So what this is that you'll notice when I create the new user here, I'm not selecting the role. By the way, you could add that feature if you wanted to, but I want this to be a specific role. So if I look at my user interface, you're going to see there's a hidden field here called user roles. So the value that is in here, which needs to be one of my group names, is what's going to be stored in the security system as the role for this user. So kind of behind the scenes, we're saying, go ahead and create this user, but guess what? They're going to be in this one role. And again, you could expose that and allow the user to select that. It's really up to you. So what I need to do is when this UX loads, I have to go in and give it the name I want it to use. So I'm going to go back to server-side events, go to OnDialogInitialize, and let me double check. I don't want to screw this up. Let me go to my web security. My group I want to put them in this case is users. It's named users. So what I need to do is in this piece of code here, I just have to type in users. So what it's going to do is it's going to go into the security system, get the unique ID for users and store it in that hidden field. And that's all I have to do. So now when Alpha goes to store that in the security system, it's going to link them to the users group. And again, you can modify that, but that's how this works here. Next, what we want to do is go here. So you'll see what's going on is after the user has submitted the dialog, it's going to do two things. First, it's going to save the data into the extended user information table. And this is a pre-built set of Xbasic that does that. Then if it is successful, you'll notice it's doing an if statement. It says if this was saved. So if this is correct, then yes, it's saved in the extended table. I want to go ahead and save them into the security system. And this is important because if for whatever reason it failed inserting the person in extended user, you don't want an orphan record. You want to make sure you have a record in the extended user information table and also a record in the security system. Now, because, and this is kind of an inside baseball, but very important, because I redid the data mining, you'll notice that earlier on when I started doing that, it gave me a message saying, hey, you got to make sure that everything is up to date if you're going to do this rebinding. And one of the most important things you need to do, if you ever redo a binding for UX, hold on a second. Then what you need to do is go find where any of these server-side actions are. And all you have to do is click on it, go to action scripting, edit action. This reopens up how this is happening. So this is basically a control panel that says, how should it save this information? It's going to write all the code for you, but you can modify it by saying, okay, I want to show a message. If there's a failure, do this. I want to do some post stuff. A lot of really cool things you can do here. But the important thing is when I open this and click OK, it rewrites the underlying Xbasic that actually performs this task. And that's important because if I've changed the data binding, I want to make sure all my Xbasic is fresh and understands the new structure. So super important, if you ever change the data binding on a UX, make sure you go and just edit the action and close it. You don't even have to change it. Just that step alone will make it happen. Now I want to do the same thing here with the security system. I didn't change anything on the security, but just to be safe, I'm going to edit that action and click OK here. That's all you need to do. But it's a very important step because if you don't do that, then potentially, and it may work sometimes, but you may see an error when this occurs. So now what I can do is save this. I'm going to call this number 2. So now I've got that saved. And by the way, this is a newer feature where since it's a new component, it says, oh, you know what? You have security on here. So I'm going to say it requires login and I need only administrators can see this. And then I'm going to go back to my tabbed UI. I'm going to go ahead and add this new component into my tabbed UI, new user, and I'll actually make it even look a little nicer. And I'll click OK. So now I have my component there. So I'm going to save this, save this. I'm going to do a full publish here of everything to my local system here, but this could, and what's cool is all these features work on IIS, Alpha Cloud, etc. So, you know, it's going to work from there. So I'm going to go ahead and log out of here, do a refresh just to make sure I've got everything refreshed. I'm going to log in as administrator. Oh. User error. Okay, so now I have my new user button here, so I'm going to click that. Okay, so I'm going to put in Bill Doe. Now I'm putting in a phone, but it's not going to save it, so it's kind of worthless. But I'm going to go ahead and do Bill Doe, and I'm going to remember there's no and password. Let's slow down, password, and we'll save this. Okay, no errors, everything looked good. Oh, I think that's emptied here, but let's go ahead and look and see if it added it to our web security system. There's our new user. Oh no, it didn't actually use it. Interesting. I wonder what it did. Let's see. Oh, you know what? I might not have had them the same. So let me go ahead and try this again. So pass. It's taking a little longer this time. Yep. I must not have these there. And by the way, there are lots of ways for you to add error messages, verify, etc. You know, this is just meant to give you that basic structure. So let's go check. And now we have Buildo. And notice it put them into the users group. So remember, that was where we set that hidden field. Let's go ahead and go back out here, log out, go into Buildo. Go ahead and do the login. And it takes us in the system, but you'll notice now, since I made some modification, I didn't set it up, but I would set this on the tabbed UI that they couldn't see this. But you'll notice the other thing is gone because I said you could only see that if there. So now I have that ability to add it. And the cool thing is this is now online. So if I publish it to Alpha Cloud, it's going to store it into the Alpha Cloud security structure, IAS, your web server, you name it. It just in this case is storing it locally from with there. So that's a introduction to the create new user and insert them into both tables. It's a really powerful, it's one you're probably going to use for any of your solutions there. If you want this component, again, send us an email, we'll send it back to you. Again, you'll have to go through and tailor it for your particular project, meaning you have to make sure to map it to the correct table and connection string. Mm-hmm. And after you've done that, it's very important that you also refresh your Xbasic so that everything works properly there. With that, I don't know. Let's see. We've got a few more minutes to cover it, and then we can cover them from there. So thank you for that question.
Excellent. In fact, we have 3.5 more minutes. So we'll go through those security questions here. One is, would it be possible to write a script that would add both a user and a role at the same time? Imagine that would be possible if you use
Yes, absolutely. Xbasic. And the way to look at that is
there are a whole bunch. Thank you for going there. Yeah, there are a whole bunch of wonderful functions here for working with the Alpha Anywhere security system.
Yeah, let me go ahead and put this in the chat window.
Context security is one of them.
Gotcha. So in here are a bunch of pre-built security methods. So you can see in here you have, for instance, add user to role, add user to roles, and this is where you can put in the user. So all of these are available. And the cool thing about these is that it doesn't matter what, again, I kind of emphasize it, but if you're on Alpha Cloud versus IAS versus standalone, it doesn't matter. All of these will work. So you can write these little scripts to, basically you don't even need a user interface. You could literally create a user interface where you just collect the data and then behind the scenes run a bunch of scripts to actually do the work and whatever you need to do it. The nice thing is that the other one's a little easier to implement because a lot of the heavy lifting is done for you. You just need to do mapping of the table structure from there. But if you go to there, there's all of these. There's creating a role on the fly, create a user, getting passwords, getting the roles for a user. All of those are available through this, basically, the set of context.security functions.
Fantastic. And the source you're pointing to looks like release notes. I think this is now in the official document.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I should probably go here and let's go to the context object. I've just got that one hard coded in there. There we go. Let's see. Well,
context
no, that's a different one. It's probably a context object. There we go. So I'll copy that and go here.
Yep.
Oh, already ahead of me. So, yeah. But as you can see, I can go here to context security object, and then this walks, and it shows you some example code and some other things like that on how to use that. Really powerful stuff.
Very cool. Well, we have 1 minute left, it looks like, and so we'll just take a quick one. And is there a way to secure columns in that table? Like, in other words, encrypt columns, that user information table might have some social security number in there or something like that. What are some options there for encryption?
Well, one of the nice things you can do is there is built-in encrypt string function. So there's a built-in encryption technology in Alpha. And so you can encrypt and decrypt data. And what you'll need to do is if you want to encrypt that data before it goes to the server or to the database, what you can do is you can come in here And in your afterDialog, I can say, okay, let's say it's e.data submitted.phone number.
Mhm.
So I can go here and I can say, okay, phone number is equal to that. And then I can say phone number is equal to encrypt string, phone number, comma, and then the key.
Just whatever your password
Mhm.
is going to be.
So now that encrypts it. Now, before it actually saves here, I have to do a little trick. I have to tell Alpha that I changed that. So what I do is down here, where's my, oh, I just reset it there. Okay, that's fine. Oh, I thought I had to do the dirty rows on that. Okay, no, that's E submitted. So then
So it would have
actually,
to be e.data submitted.phone number equals. Just setting that variable phone number wouldn't quite do the trick because it's not aware of that, right? That's
well,
the
it
variable
depends.
still.
Okay, so one of the tricks is, and it's not showing up here,
Mhm.
but because I think this is an old UX, so let me go ahead and create a new UX here.
Sure.
And let me go to the after server side, after dialog. There, this is the newer one. So this is safe. Now, if the user entered a phone number, it's going to work.
Mhm.
So, but the way to be super safe is if you change anything you want to store, it's possible they didn't modify the phone number, but you still want to encrypt it. So what you can do is you say e.dirtycolumns is equal to this plus phone. And this is the name in the database, the phone number here,
Mhm.
the column in the database. So now what will happen is this tells Alpha when it runs this little piece of code, oh, no matter whether the user modified it or not, because Alpha tries to save cycles, so it only will apply the insert or update based on what was changed. So
Right.
in this case, it says, oh, add that one in, so you force it. Now here's the other trick, is when you do the OnDialogInitialize, you're gonna have to decrypt this number using the opposite and updating that field manually. Because Alpha won't do that for you automatically. Otherwise, it's just going to show the encrypted data in that
Yeah, the
field.
garbled version. Yep.
Yeah, so there's a little more work to be done. But the nice thing is you can encrypt data before it goes to the database. Now, I would highly suggest that instead of doing all that complexity, you get a database that supports encryption built in,
out of the
and therefore you
get-go.
don't have to deal with it.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, it's the only way to fly. And I know the SQL Server does. The problem is when you start getting to there, they start charging you a lot more money for good reason. But if you're that serious about security, it's probably worth the money. And you also then don't have to worry about a code. You don't have to embed keys in here. There's just a lot of advantages.
Fantastic. Dion, thanks very much for actually
Thank
2 minutes
you.
over.
Great questions from
I
everybody.
know, fantastic questions. If we didn't get to your question today, please send an email to guides@alphasoftware.com and we will be happy to address it in the meantime. Dion is off next week. We will let you know what our topic will be, though, before we do it. I think we're going to have a guest speaker, possibly Sarah, if she's back in action. Otherwise, we'll find someone for you. But we do hope
Someone
to see
far
you
more
next week.
entertaining and better qualified.
I don't know about that, Dion. Otherwise, we will see you next week at the next Wednesday webinar. Thanks very much for joining us. Take care and have a great week. Bye-bye.